call this meeting of the Newark City Council Finance Committee to order. Members present, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Marmee, and myself. We do have 5 items on our agenda this evening. I just want to remind folks that I'll read the titles of the piece of legislation. We'll have the person for the administration speaking, and then we'll take questions and answers, and please direct us to the chair. Our first item of business is to consider ordinance number 1423, providing for the issuance of not to exceed $8.1 million, various purpose refunding bonds, and declaring an emergency. Our auditor, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. A refunding bond issue is similar to refinancing your house. We've done this a few times in the past. I think we did it in 1998 with Waterworks Improvement Bond issue, and then we did it again in 2006 with the Longburg TIF bond issue. What this will do is allow us to refinance our bonds at a lower rate of interest. And we project that we will save $966,000 over the next 17 years. This debt will be paid off in the year 2031. The way it will be structured is we'll see greater savings the first few years of the structured refinance, but there'll be savings throughout the course of the debt. So we're always looking for ways to save money. I review our debt all the time to see if we can do this. Sometimes bonds are not recallable. Other times they're recallable after 10 years. So that's what's the case with this one. This was originally issued in 2003, so it's now callable. So with interest rates the way they are, I met with the mayor recently, we discussed this, and we think it would be in the city's best interest to do this.
And Mr. Johnson, this, just to be clear, this is for the police station and the West Main Street State Fire Station.
Yes,
correct.
Correct.
Questions from the committee?
I'll make a motion.
A motion by Mr. Bubb. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any further questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Our next piece of legislation is to consider Resolution 1468, appropriating monies for the municipal corporation. And I believe Mr. Loomis is there. Yes?
Yeah, this is appropriation of our water funds. This is into our, what we call our reimbursement account. I think I hear a few months ago we had a similar issue. We had some people, we actually had a guy from Newark, New Jersey, pay us about $3,000, so we got to reimburse them when they pay us accidentally, and so we got to appropriate money in this fund to pay those reimbursements. And so this is what this is. It's kind of tough for us to budget these when people are accidentally sending us too much money. We got to actually send checks back, and so that's kind of where we get into this thing. So we're hoping 10,000 gets us through the rest of the year. The rest of this money is spent for reimbursement of deposits and that kind of thing. We get hit hard a couple times recently with some accidental payments. So.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Bubb. Second, Mr. Martin. Questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Our next piece of legislation is to consider Resolution 1473, authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit applications to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for fiscal year 2014 Edwin Byrne Justice Assistance Grant funding. Ms. Gillis.
Bob Carson and I will be working together to put together a technology application for the Jack and Lee grant. Grant in the past has not required local match. We intend to go after as much.
All right. Motion. A motion, Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bubb. Questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? quiet evening. All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, thank you, Mr. Our next piece of legislation is to consider ordinance number 1424, an ordinance of declaration of official intent with respect to reimbursement of temporary advances made for capital expenditures to be made from subsequent borrowings and declaring an emergency. If I can get that all out. Mr. Moorhead.
I'll go through this. If you have any other questions, maybe Steve could help out. But a few months ago, several months ago, we started the process to borrow with a bond anticipation note of $1.1 million. And prior to that, ODOT needed funding on deposit for the West Church and 30th Street intersection project. And if you remember, part of the $1.1 million of borrowing had that project in there. So in order to keep ODOT happy, I advanced the funding out of the license plate permissive tax fund to ODOT. And what we want to do is refund that license plate permissive tax fund with the note sale that we just recently did. So this piece of legislation will allow us to do that. And if there's any questions, I'll try to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Moorhead. Questions from the committee? Motion by Mrs. Floyd.
Second.
Second, Mr. Cross. Questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? Mr. Gottlieb.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I may have missed it. And the reason for the emergency was what?
I think it should be expedited because we also need to appropriate this money, and we need to do that relatively soon. And it actually was on the agenda for tonight's meeting, and I asked it to be pulled because this legislation needs to be in place first to allow us to reimburse ourselves. I think there's a construction schedule that Mr. Moorhead would like to get started on, so the sooner we get this out of the way, the sooner they can do that. But basically what this does is, this will allow us to reimburse our license plate permissive tax fund with borrowed funds. And because we had to come up with money relatively quickly for our ODOT project, Mr. Moorhead had to pledge his license plate permissive tax funds. So what he was planning to do with that, he can't do until this legislation is in place, and then we can appropriate the borrowed money to make us whole. So this is just the kind of thing, it's something we used to not have to do, but there are very strict guidelines now on public debt because it's tax-free investments for the buyers of the bonds. So the IRS and the SEC both scrutinize them, are barring very closely. So to answer your question, just to keep things moving in a timely fashion is why it's an emergency.
Yeah, and I guess, Mr. Chairman, if it's going to hold up construction, I can certainly see why the emergency clause might be warranted.
And one thing I want to add is this was done by our bond counsel, formerly Beck Shaken Williams, now Goodmore Scholes. And since we normally are facing some kind of time low with paying off a note with a new note, I've always asked them to make sure they put the emergency clause on there so we keep everything in proper time frame. And I think they've got it ahead now, they always have to do this. But in this case, we really did move for the emergency.
Thank you very much. Any further comments, questions from the audience or from the committee? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Moorhead. And then the last piece of legislation is to consider resolution number 1474, authorizing the Director of Public Service to prepare and submit applications to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvements Program and to execute contracts as required. Mr. Moorhead.
Yes, the time is coming up here to apply for the next round of state capital improvements program funding. And this is a piece of legislation that will allow us to do that. We supply this, the approved piece of legislation in our application package. And the priority project that we're looking at right now is the reconstruction of a portion of West Main Street, basically from about 21st Street west to 34th Street. Both edges along the curb lanes are in really bad shape. And so we want to reconstruct those. We're hoping that we're still working on the plans and the cost estimates. If for some reason the cost of that get over and above what we can handle with this grant application, then we'll shift gears and do that as a later project. And in substitution, we'll do a street resurfacing project with various streets throughout the city. So we're trying to make the project match the funding that could be available.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Motion, Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bub. Questions or comments of the committee? Questions or comments of the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. That concludes the agenda for Finance Committee. Next is Service.
Call the Service Committee meeting to order. We have Mr. Blake, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Rath, Mr. Roletta, and myself. Our first resolution is 14-69, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to accept bids and sell certain surplus personal property now owned by the City of Newark, Ohio, and declaring that such property is no longer needed for any municipal purpose. Mr. Rhodes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Saturday, October 11th, we want to have an auction at the service complex that will encompass 64 cars, miscellaneous bicycles, office furniture from various departments. We need your permission in order to do so.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Bubb. Are there any questions from the committee, Mr. Rhodes? Any questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Our second resolution is 14-72, authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio to advertise for bids and enter into contract subject to the appropriation of funds for construction of the downtown renovation project. Mr. Loomis?
Yeah, this is just legislation that allows us to go out and advertise for bids and accept those bids and enter into a contract for the downtown renovation project that we've been working on the last few months.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Bubb. Do I have a second? Mr. Rath? Any questions from the committee? Any questions in the audience? Mr. Guthrie?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Roger, I just want to make sure that I understand. This piece only deals with the sewer separation. This, by passing this piece of legislation, the council is not adopting the model that we saw at the public meetings as far as the change in direction of traffic and the roundabouts and that kind of thing.
This is the bid, the entire project.
That then would include the roundabouts and what I need to know.
Any other questions from the audience? All in favor of moving this forward to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moves on 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. That concludes the service committee. Thank you. Capital improvements next.
I'll call Capital Improvement Committee to order. Present are Mr. Rath, Mr. Loretta, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, and myself. This is to consider resolution number 1470, appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation. Mr. Rath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What we're looking for is $6,000 from the capital improvement budget. And we're going to buy a air compressor that will be used in the street department. Compressor is just that, it's old. I need to replace it.
Okay, any questions from the committee?
Motion.
Any questions from the audience? All those in favor, pass on to the full council? Signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Are we adjourned?
We are adjourned.